The sky above New Eden was the color of fire, not the warm, golden glow of a sunset, but a violent, burning red. It started as a whisper, static interference in the colony's communications. Then the silence came. No distress signals could be sent. No warnings could be given. Lieutenant Jack Reeve stood on the balcony of the outpost control center, watching the children play in the fields below. His wife, Anna, waved at him from their small garden, smiling as their daughter, Lily, chased after a mechanical butterfly drone. It was a perfect day, the kind of day he had fought for in the last war, the kind of peace he thought would last. Then the sky split open. A massive Z-Corps dreadnought emerged from hyperspace, its dark silhouette blotting out the sun. More followed. 20, 50, 100 ships, hovering over the colony like death itself. Jack's blood turned cold. He had seen these ships before. They were weapons of extermination. The colony's early warning system blared to life, but it was too late. A deep, guttural voice echoed across the colony's communication systems. "This is High Warlord Varzek of the Z-Corps Dominion. Humanity is weak. Your resistance is meaningless. Surrender or be erased." Panic spread like wildfire. People ran through the streets, screaming, searching for shelter that did not exist. The first strike came seconds later, an energy blast from the dreadnought's main cannon. The impact was instant. The marketplace vanished in a fiery explosion, sending bodies flying through the air like ragdolls. Buildings crumbled. The ground shook with the force of 1,000 earthquakes. Jack sprinted toward the nearest comm station, shoving panicked civilians aside. "Get a distress signal out. Call Earth. Call anyone." But the comms officer shook his head, terror in his eyes. "They've jammed everything. No signals can get through." Another blast. The medical center collapsed, its walls crushing the injured inside. Jack watched in horror as people he knew, friends, neighbors, were turned to ash before his eyes. Anna, Lily. He turned, heart pounding, scanning the chaos for his family. His legs carried him before his mind could, sprinting down the burning streets, past the corpses and the wreckage. The sky rained fire now, plasma strikes turning entire blocks into smoldering craters. The colony's defense forces scrambled to fight back. Anti-aircraft turrets opened fire, sending railgun rounds shrieking toward the Z-Corps ships. Some smaller enemy craft exploded, crashing into buildings. But it wasn't enough. For every Z-Corps ship that fell, 10 more took its place. Jack reached his home, or what was left of it. The garden was on fire. The roof had caved in. His wife was on the ground, blood seeping from a wound on her side. Lily clung to her, crying, her small hands shaking. "Daddy." Jack dropped to his knees, pulling them both into his arms. "I've got you. I've got you." Anna coughed, her breaths shallow. "Jack, you have to. Take Lily and run. I'm not leaving you." Before she could respond, the shadows of Z-Corps war drones loomed over them. Their red eyes glowed, scanning, locking onto human targets. Then they opened fire. Jack threw himself over Lily as bullets tore through the ground around them. His wife gasped, a sharp, painful sound, before her body went still. A bullet had gone clean through her chest. Something inside Jack broke. A scream tore from his throat, raw and full of rage. He grabbed a fallen soldier's rifle and fired blindly, hitting one drone, then another. Sparks flew as the machines crashed. "Run, Lily." He grabbed his daughter's hand and bolted through the alleyways, dodging falling debris, avoiding enemy patrols. The air was thick with smoke and death. They reached the colony's underground bunker, where the last survivors were being evacuated into a hidden transport ship. Only one ship remained. "Take her." Jack shoved Lily into the arms of a medic. "No, Daddy." Lily sobbed, reaching for him as the doors began to close. Jack placed a hand on the glass. "I'll find you. I promise." Then, the ship launched. It disappeared into the clouds, escaping into deep space. A Z-Corps warrior stepped into the bunker, towering over Jack. Its blade gleamed under the firelight. Jack raised his rifle, but the alien knocked it away effortlessly. It grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The warrior's voice was deep, filled with amusement. "You fight well for a lesser species." Jack spat blood at its face. "Go to hell." The alien chuckled. "Not before you." It threw him to the ground, raising its blade for the final strike. Then, a sudden explosion shook the bunker. The colony's power core detonated, a final act of defiance. The shockwave tore through the settlement, engulfing everything in white-hot destruction. Jack felt himself being thrown through the air. And then, nothing. Silence. When he woke up, the sky was no longer red. It was black. Smoke and ash covered everything. The colony was gone. The only thing left was ruins and corpses. He lay there, staring at the devastation. His wife was dead. His daughter was gone. His home was dust. But something else burned inside him now. Rage. He turned his head and saw a single calm terminal, half buried in rubble. A faint signal light flickered. Jack dragged himself toward it, every muscle screaming in pain. He pressed a single button and whispered one final message to the stars. "This is Lieutenant Jack Reeve. New Eden has fallen. But we are not done. Not yet." Then, the signal reached Earth, and humanity answered. The message from New Eden spread through Earth's military networks like wildfire. Every officer, every soldier, every civilian with a beating heart saw the images, the burning cities, the lifeless bodies. The sky turned to fire. The Z-Corps had wiped out an entire colony without mercy. They had massacred innocent men, women, and children. They thought humanity would kneel. They were wrong. Deep inside Earth's most classified military base, Admiral Sophia Kane stood in front of a holo display, watching the footage of New Eden's destruction. Her jaw tightened, her fingers curled into fists. She had fought in the last war against a different alien race, had seen countless battles. But this was genocide. "How many survivors?" she asked. A young officer swallowed hard. "Less than 100, mostly children. The escaped transports reached a deep space outpost. But New Eden is gone, ma'am." The room fell silent. The officers surrounding the table looked at her, waiting. They knew what she was about to say. Admiral Kane's voice was cold as steel. "Prepare for war." The order spread across Earth's military networks. Operation Retribution was launched. War factories roared to life. Fleets were assembled. Secret projects that had been in development for decades were activated. For years, humanity had prepared for the possibility of another alien invasion. They had developed stealth ships with cloaking technology, AI-controlled combat drones, and cybernetic super soldiers with enhanced speed and strength. They had built weapons powerful enough to rip through enemy defenses. But now, they weren't just defending. They were hunting. In the heart of Earth's orbit, the SCS Revenant, the most advanced warship ever built, prepared to launch. Its hull was coated in experimental cloaking material, making it nearly invisible to scanners. Inside the command deck, Captain Elias Carter stood before his crew. He had fought against aliens before, but this was different. This was personal. "They thought we'd run," Carter said, his voice calm but deadly. "They thought they could erase us, but they don't understand one thing about humans." He paused, looking at the faces of his soldiers. "We don't lose. We adapt. And we hit back harder than anyone else." A roar of agreement filled the room. The Revenant, along with a fleet of cloaked warships, jumped into hyperspace. Their first target, a Z-Corps supply station in a remote sector. It was a crucial hub, providing fuel and weapons to their warships. Destroying it would cripple their operations. As the fleet emerged from hyperspace, the station appeared on their sensors. A massive structure floating in the darkness, surrounded by Z-Corps ships. "All ships, hold formation," Carter commanded. "Stay cloaked until my mark." The humans waited, watched. Patience was key. The Z-Corps, arrogant in their superiority, had left the station lightly guarded. They assumed no one would dare attack them so soon after New Eden. Their mistake. Carter gave the order. Fire. The Revenant's railguns roared to life, unleashing kinetic rounds that tore through the Z-Corps defenses. Human stealth ships decloaked one by one, launching a wave of missiles into the station's command center. The first explosion sent shockwaves through space, igniting fuel reserves and causing secondary detonations. Inside the station, Z-Corps warriors scrambled to respond, but before they could react, human shock troopers breached the hull, storming in with plasma rifles and combat exosuits. Jack Reeve was among them. He had survived the destruction of New Eden. Barely. His body was covered in scars, but his mind was sharper than ever. He moved like a ghost through the smoke-filled corridors, taking down Z-Corps soldiers with ruthless precision. A Z-Corps warrior lunged at him, massive and armored, but Jack sidestepped, plunging a combat knife into its throat, twisting it deep. He whispered as the creature fell. "For my family." The Z-Corps forces collapsed within minutes. The surviving officers tried to send a distress signal, but it was too late. The Revenant's AI warfare systems hijacked their communications, replacing their calls for help with a single message, broadcasted across Z-Corps territory. "We are coming for you." The attack sent shockwaves through the Z-Corps dominion. They had never expected humanity to fight back so viciously. The High Warlord, Varzek, slammed his fist against the command table, his sharp teeth bared in frustration. "They should be broken," he roared. "Why are they attacking?" His advisors looked at one another, uncertain. One of them hesitated before speaking. "We underestimated them, Warlord." Varzek's eyes burned with fury. "Then we burned them to the ground." The Z-Corps prepared a full-scale invasion of Earth. Their fleets, larger than anything humanity had ever faced, gathered at the edge of human-controlled space. They would not make the same mistake again. This time, they would exterminate humanity completely. But Earth was ready. Deep within a hidden military bunker, scientists activated the final phase of Operation Retribution, a weapon that had never been used before, a planet-killer railgun stationed on Earth's moon, capable of wiping out entire continents in a single shot. As the Z-Corps fleet moved closer, humanity prepared their final stand. The battle for survival had just begun. The stars above Earth were no longer peaceful. They were filled with war. The Z-Corps invasion fleet had arrived, a force so massive that it blotted out the sky. Their warships, larger than cities, hovered like gods of destruction, preparing to unleash their wrath. Their troops, numbering in the millions, stood ready to descend upon the human homeworld and wipe it from existence. Humanity had been pushed to the brink. But they were not broken. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, inside a classified military bunker, the leaders of Earth's defense forces gathered around a holotable. Admiral Sophia Kane's face was carved from stone, her eyes scanning the latest battle reports. Captain Elias Carter stood beside her, arms crossed, his jaw clenched in frustration. Jack Reeve, battle-hardened and vengeful, leaned over the table, studying every detail. "We can't fight them in open war," Kane said. "They outnumber us, they outgun us, and their technology is superior." Jack's voice was cold. "So we don't fight them head-on. We take the fight where they least expect it." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan." Jack nodded and tapped a section of the star map. "Right here. The Z-Corps High Command is stationed on their flagship, the Harbinger. It's the brain of this invasion. If we take it out, their forces will crumble. Without leadership, they'll be vulnerable." A murmur spread through the room. It was a suicide mission. But Kane saw the fire in Jack's eyes. She saw the same fire in every soldier standing there. Humanity had been pushed too far. They were done running. "We'll need a stealth team," Kane said. "A small strike force. In and out before they know what hit them." Carter smirked. Sounds like a job for Operation Shadowfall. The Revenant's crew assembled in the hangar, suited in Black Ops combat armor designed for infiltration. Jack tightened the straps on his vest, feeling the weight of the mission ahead. This was it. As the stealth transport left the Revenant, cloaked from enemy scanners, Jack looked at the planet below. Earth. His home. The place where his daughter was waiting for him. He wouldn't let the Z-Corps take it. The Harbinger loomed ahead, a titanic battleship floating in high orbit. Its hull was lined with massive plasma cannons capable of reducing cities to dust. Thousands of Z-Corps warriors patrolled its corridors. Jack and his team slipped through the ship's defenses, landing in a maintenance bay. The moment their boots touched the ground, they moved like shadows, silenced weapons eliminating guards before alarms could sound. They hacked into the ship's mainframe, downloading data on enemy troop movements. What they found made Jack's blood run cold. Their entire fleet is preparing for an orbital strike on Earth, Carter whispered. They're going to wipe out everything. Jack didn't hesitate. Then we blow this ship to hell. They planted detonation charges along the main power conduits, but before they could escape, alarms blared through the ship. The Z-Corps had detected them. Warriors poured into the corridors, weapons raised. The team was forced into a firefight, their silenced approach now shattered. Gunfire echoed through the ship as bullets and plasma bolts tore through the air. Jack moved with deadly precision, his rifle cutting down enemies with every shot. Carter fought beside him, leading the charge forward. But the Z-Corps were relentless. They outnumbered the humans 20-1. Fall back to the hangar. Kane's voice came through the comms. The Revenant is inbound for extraction. Jack and his team ran, dodging enemy fire as the ship shook from internal explosions. The charges had started going off, tearing through the Harbinger systems. The ship was dying. Then the final obstacle appeared, High Warlord Varzek himself. The Z-Corps leader stood in the center of the hangar, his massive war axe dripping with energy. His eyes glowed with rage. You think you can kill a god, human? Jack didn't stop moving. You're not a god. He raised his rifle and fired. Varzek deflected the shots with his armor, charging forward with terrifying speed. Jack barely dodged as the war axe smashed into the floor, cracking the metal. The battle became a blur. Jack fought with everything he had, dodging strikes that could cut him in half. His combat knife found weak points in the alien's armor, slicing deep. But Varzek was stronger, faster. The warlord grabbed Jack by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Your species dies today. Jack struggled, vision darkening. Then, a sudden explosion rocked the ship. The Revenant's cannons had opened fire, tearing into the Harbinger's hull. Varzek hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was all Jack needed. He pulled a plasma grenade from his belt and jammed it into the warlord's armor. Not today. The explosion ripped through Varzek's chest, sending him flying. Jack crashed to the ground, coughing, gasping for breath. The Revenant hovered above, its loading ramp open. Carter grabbed Jack's arm, dragging him toward the ship. They barely made it inside before the Harbinger erupted into flames. The Z-Corps flagship was destroyed. As the Revenant sped away, Jack watched the enemy fleet through the viewport. Without their leader, the Z-Corps forces fell into disarray. Their formations crumbled. Human warships seized the opportunity, launching a counterattack that tore through the invading fleet. Jack leaned back against the wall, exhausted but victorious. He thought of his daughter. He thought of Earth. They had turned the tide. But the war was not over yet. The destruction of the Z-Corps flagship had thrown their invasion into chaos. Their fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now a fractured army without a leader. Some Z-Corps warships hesitated, their commanders unsure of their next move. Others, driven by fury, continued their assault on Earth, determined to wipe out humanity at any cost. But humanity was not finished. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in the most classified military base ever built, Admiral Sophia Kane stood before a glowing holographic display. Her expression was unreadable, but the tension in the room was thick. Officers and scientists surrounded her, their eyes fixed on one thing, the weapon that had never been used before. A planet-killer railgun. Nicknamed Thor's Wrath, it was Earth's most powerful weapon, a cannon so massive that it had to be built into the moon itself. Using magnetic acceleration technology, it could fire tungsten projectiles at near-light speed, delivering an impact strong enough to shatter entire fleets. Until now, it had been nothing more than a theory, a secret held in the deepest shadows of military intelligence. But the time for secrecy was over. Kane's voice was calm, but her words carried the weight of history. It's time to end this. Her officers exchanged uneasy glances. Ma'am, if we use Thor's Wrath, there's no going back. The Z-Corps will see it as an act of extermination. Kane didn't blink. They already see us as insects. They slaughtered our people like animals. This isn't about diplomacy anymore. She turned to the weapons engineer. Prepare to fire. Across the moon's surface, enormous blast doors rumbled open, revealing Thor's Wrath, a colossal railgun barrel that stretched for miles. The cannon's power generators hummed as they charged, drawing energy from deep within the moon's core. Back on Earth, Captain Elias Carter and Jack Reeve stood inside the command center, watching the final preparations. Jack clenched his fists. What's the target? Kane's expression was grim. The Z-Corps fleet has regrouped at Lagrange Point 3, just beyond Earth's gravitational reach. They think they're safe there, outside the range of our conventional weapons. Carter smirked. They're about to find out how wrong they are. The plan was simple. Lure the Z-Corps fleet into position. Make them think humanity was weak. Then, when they least expected it, unleash the weapon that would change the course of the war. The Revenant and a handful of human warships jumped to Lagrange Point 3, broadcasting a distress signal as if they were fleeing the battlefield. The Z-Corps took the bait. Aboard the Z-Corps command ship, the highest-ranking surviving warlords gathered. They were furious. The death of High Warlord Varzek had humiliated them, and they were desperate for revenge. One of the warlords bared his fangs. The humans are retreating. They are broken. Another snarled. Crush them. Wipe them out. The Z-Corps deployed their fleet, sending hundreds of warships in pursuit of the fleeing humans. They didn't know they were flying straight into a trap. On board the Revenant, Jack watched the enemy fleet move into position. He took a deep breath. They're in the kill zone. Kane's voice came through the comms. Fire. The moon shook as Thor's Wrath fired. A massive tungsten projectile launched from the lunar surface at relativistic speeds. The sheer force of the shot ripped through space, shattering the first Z-Corps battleship on impact. The explosion was so massive that it engulfed 3 other warships nearby. Before the Z-Corps could react, the railgun fired again and again. Each shot tore through their fleet like a god's hammer, reducing entire warships to debris in seconds. On the Z-Corps command ship, panic spread like wildfire. Their fleet, once numbering in the thousands, was being annihilated within minutes. A warlord roared, "It's a planetary weapon." The humans. Before he could finish, another tungsten round slammed into their ship, tearing it apart in an instant. The trap had worked. With their fleet decimated, the surviving Z-Corps forces panicked. Some tried to flee, but human warships, now reinforced by Earth's full military might, chased them down, blasting them apart. Others attempted a desperate counterattack, but without leadership, they were slaughtered. The battle that had once seemed hopeless was now a one-sided massacre. Back in Earth's command center, Kane exhaled. We did it. Jack looked at the burning wreckage of the Z-Corps fleet. He thought of New Eden, of the billions who had died. This wasn't just victory. This was justice. But something didn't feel right. He turned to Carter. They never send their full invasion force without a backup plan. Carter frowned. You think there's another fleet? Jack's gut told him yes. The Z-Corps weren't just warriors. They were conquerors. And conquerors always had contingencies. As the last enemy warships were destroyed, a new signal appeared on the scanners. Jack's heart sank. Oh no! From the depths of space, a second Z-Corps fleet emerged. And this one was even bigger than the first. The second Z-Corps fleet emerged from deep space like a storm of death. Their warships, larger and deadlier than before, outnumbered the remnants of humanity's forces 10-1. The destruction of their first invasion fleet had enraged them. This time, they were here to erase humanity from existence. Jack Reeves stood in the command center of the Revenant, watching the scanners light up with enemy contacts. His hands curled into fists. We just wiped out their fleet, and they sent another one twice the size. How many ships do these bastards have? Captain Elias Carter clenched his jaw. They want revenge. We humiliated them. Now they won't stop until we're ashes. Admiral Kane's voice came through the comms, calm but urgent. All units, fall back to Earth's defensive perimeter. We hold the line. The human fleet turned, racing toward Earth's orbit, but the Z-Corps were faster. Within minutes, their dreadnoughts opened fire. Massive plasma beams cut through the darkness, tearing apart human warships in a single blast. A destroyer to the left of the Revenant exploded into a fireball, its debris scattering across space. Jack flinched as the shockwave rattled the ship. Damn it! We can't take this kind of punishment. Carter gritted his teeth. We're not retreating. Not now. Earth's defense platforms, massive orbital cannons, and missile silos opened fire. Hundreds of nuclear-tipped warheads streaked through space, detonating against the Z-Corps fleet. Fire and radiation consumed dozens of enemy ships, but it wasn't enough. The Z-Corps had learned from their mistakes. Their new fleet was heavily shielded, and they pushed forward, undeterred. Inside the Z-Corps command ship, Supreme Overlord Xirax watched the battle unfold. Unlike Varzek, he was not blinded by arrogance. He was patient, calculating. The humans have spirit, he mused, his black eyes studying the battlefield. But spirit does not stop annihilation. He turned to his fleet commanders. Advance. Show them what true power is. The Z-Corps fleet tightened formation, moving like a massive wall of destruction. Hundreds of fighters swarmed ahead, overwhelming human pilots in brutal dogfights. Human warships fired everything they had, but for every Z-Corps ship they destroyed, 5 more took its place. On the Revenant, Jack watched in horror as one of Earth's last battleships, the Titan's Wrath, was surrounded. The mighty vessel fought bravely, its cannons unleashing hell, but the Z-Corps tore into it like scavengers. Explosions erupted across its hull before it finally detonated, taking an enemy cruiser with it. Jack slammed his fist against the console. We're losing. We need something. Anything. Then, Admiral Kane's voice came through the comms. And this time, there was steel in her tone. Get ready to turn this around. On the moon's surface, deep inside the hidden military base, the final failsafe was being activated, something even more terrifying than Thor's wrath. A weapon known only as Project Ragnarok. Unlike the railgun, Ragnarok was not designed to fire at ships. It was designed to break planets. Kane turned to her weapons officer. Target the Z-Corps homeworld. The room fell silent. Even the most hardened officers hesitated. Mom, the officer swallowed. If we fire, we're committing genocide. Kane's voice was cold as steel. They have no such hesitation with us. The command was given. From the lunar base, Ragnarok fired its first and only shot. A graviton warhead, traveling at near light speed, tore across the void. It ripped through space, bypassing the ongoing battle, and vanished into the distance. The Z-Corps fleet continued its assault, unaware of the doom that had just been unleashed upon their home. Then, minutes later, the transmission came in. A single distorted signal from the Z-Corps homeworld. It was a scream. Millions of voices crying out in terror as the planet's core collapsed in on itself. Jack and Carter watched as new scanner data appeared. The Z-Corps homeworld was gone. Destroyed. The Supreme Warlords aboard the Z-Corps command ship froze as emergency transmissions flooded in. Every Z-Corps across the battlefield saw the same thing. Their homeworld reduced to nothing but dust and fire. Their empire was dead. For the first time in their history, the Z-Corps knew fear. Aboard the Z-Corps flagship, Supreme Overlord Xirax stared at the transmissions in silent horror. His empire, which had lasted thousands of years, had been wiped out in an instant. His hands shook with rage, with grief. Then he looked back at the battle. His warriors were hesitating. Their formation had broken. Their will to fight was gone. Xirax clenched his fists. No, but it was too late. The humans saw their moment. Jack and Carter led the charge, rallying Earth's remaining forces. With the Z-Corps in disarray, human warships pushed forward, tearing into the enemy fleet. Jack's voice rang through the comms. Show them what it feels like to be on the losing side. The Z-Corps tried to regroup, but without their homeworld, without their leaders, they had nothing left to fight for. Some ships fled, jumping into hyperspace, abandoning the battle. Others fought to the last breath, but one by one, they fell. The Supreme Overlord refused to retreat. His flagship continued to fire, destroying 3 human cruisers before a barrage of missiles slammed into its hull. The mighty warship erupted in flames. Xirax's final words echoed through the burning bridge. We were gods. How did we fall to mortals? And then his ship was gone. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Jack slumped into his seat, exhaustion hitting him like a hammer. Carter let out a shaky breath. It's over. On Earth, billions of people cheered. The invasion that had nearly wiped out their species had ended in victory. But Jack didn't celebrate. He looked at the wreckage, at the countless ships burning in orbit, at the memories of every friend he had lost. Yeah, he murmured, it's over. But at what cost? The battlefield was silent. For the first time since the war began, the sky above Earth was free of enemy ships. The Z-Corps fleet was gone. Some had been destroyed, some had fled, and others had surrendered when they realized their homeworld had been erased from existence. Jack Reeves stood on the damaged bridge of the Revenant, staring at the wreckage outside. Broken Z-Corps warships drifted in orbit, their once mighty vessels reduced to debris. Fires still raged across the shattered hulls of human battleships, the price of their victory written in flames. Captain Elias Carter exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. I still can't believe it. We actually won. Jack didn't reply. His mind was still processing everything. The Z-Corps, the monsters who had enslaved countless worlds, who had burned entire planets to the ground, were finished. Their empire was no more. And yet, instead of triumph, Jack felt something else gnawing at his chest. Admiral Kane's voice crackled through the comms. Revenant, report your status. Carter tapped the console. We're intact, but barely. Shields are fried, and we lost a third of our crew. But we're still here. Good. I want all surviving ships to return to Earth. We have a lot to rebuild. Jack looked at Carter. And what about the Z-Corps survivors? Kane's voice was cold. They made their choice when they came here to exterminate us. We're not in the business of mercy. The channel went silent. Jack exhaled. He understood the hatred. He felt it too. He remembered New Eden, reduced to ash. He remembered Bonner and the other soldiers who had died fighting in the trenches, hoping for a miracle. He remembered the screams of civilians as Z-Corps warlords slaughtered them without hesitation. But even so, this wasn't just a victory. This was a warning to the galaxy. Carter sighed. Let's head home. The Revenant turned toward Earth, its engines sputtering from damage. Around them, the remaining human warships did the same. For the first time in years, there was no enemy fleet waiting for them. When they entered Earth's atmosphere, Jack felt his breath catch. The planet was still scared from the invasion. Entire cities had been leveled. Smoke still rose from burning wreckage. But despite everything, despite the destruction and loss, humanity had survived. The fleet landed near the United Earth Command headquarters, what remained of the once mighty capital. Soldiers, engineers, and civilians ran to greet them, cheering as they saw their warriors return. Jack stepped off the ship, his boots hitting the dirt. The air smelled of smoke and ozone. He saw Kane standing on the platform, surrounded by officers. When she saw him and Carter approaching, she nodded. "You did well," she said simply. Jack shook his head. "We all did." Kane glanced at the horizon, where the sun was rising over the ruins of the city. "The war is over, but the fight isn't." Jack frowned. "You think there are more Z-Corps out there?" "Not many," Kane admitted. "Their empire was built on power. Without their homeworld, without their leaders, they have nothing left to hold them together. Some might try to rebuild, but they'll never be what they were." Jack crossed his arms. "So what happens now?" Kane turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Now, we make sure this never happens again." That night, across Earth, celebrations erupted. People cheered in the streets, lighting fires, singing songs, remembering those who had been lost. The victory had come at a terrible cost, but humanity had done the impossible. They had fought against the strongest empire in the galaxy. And they had won. News of the Z-Corps' fall spread across the stars. Other alien civilizations, ones who had lived in fear of the warlords, now saw humanity in a different light. Some had doubted that the fragile species from Earth would last a month in a real war. Now, they knew the truth. You don't mess with humans. Jack sat on the edge of a ruined balcony, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Some with fear, some with awe. Carter sat beside him, holding a bottle of something strong. "To the ones we lost." Jack took it, raising it toward the sky. "To them." He drank, letting the burn settle in his chest. He thought of New Eden. He thought of Bonner. He thought of the billions who had died before humanity finally struck back. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure no one ever underestimated humanity again. Because this was what happened when you messed with humans.